Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and I come in here fresh like a loaf of bread every single day. And it is through my experiences and my adventures. It is through the lessons that I come in, those realizations, those delving deeper. It's that curiosity, right? And I suspect I'm not getting myself into too much trouble in the moment with this. But I think a lot of that is because I come in without those expectations. I don't come in as that know it all. Though sometimes my sister says I can be a little bit preachy. Maybe that's my nature. That's not my intent, but I can't deny the person that I am. And I cannot be an interject on how somebody thinks about me because everybody gets to have their own opinion. The only thing that we have control over is ourselves, right? Our own actions, our own thoughts, our own choices, our own movement. And in showing up here, and I think it's kind of pertinent towards the conversation that we're having because if you popped in yesterday, you know we picked that word genuineness this week. Wow. It's really kind of incredible. We're on our 14th word. We pick a word every single week. And I blindly do it. I have a list of over 60 words, and we're putting a deck together of just these words, just the insights and the different perspectives, maybe a little bit of the conversations that we have in those moments in my experiencing or are experiencing, right? Because we live in crazy town in the moment. But if you were living 100 years ago, you would be saying that. Well, you wouldn't be saying I live in crazy town, but you would be having the same feeling and the same expressions, and maybe even worse because there are a lot of the comforts that we take for advantage of in this day and age that we live in, they become expectations. Going into this conversation today, I think, talking about genuineness, we're going to look at the perspective of the truth, right? And I can only express this again through my own experiences, through my own lessons, and through the lessons that are present in the world in the moment for us all to experience and for us to all to see. And again, remember what I said, that I found it very curious how these words come and in the patterning of when they come and how often they come and how long it takes me to pick it up, right? Because I was watching a documentary last night, and it was it was enjoyable. I don't usually watch these kind of documentaries. It was a Fifth Estate, and I found it to be, I don't know why I came into the program. I don't usually watch Fifth Estate. I know it's a television show, but it happened into my feed. And but the topic, right? And it was and I knew right away that I would have to pull this into the conversation, that it was meant to be pulled up in the conversation this week, just because and how those words have been popping up in their patterning and how we got this word genuine. This documentary I watched, and none of this even crossed my mind. We got this word yesterday afternoon, right? And right off the hop, I said I was going to do a little bit of research, and we'll see what kind of perspective will come in today and talk about this word. And then I just carried on. I just carried on with my day. Like I said, if I don't write things down sometimes, right? Not always, but sometimes, right? If they're difficult, if they're monotonous, if they're not really what we want to do in the moment, right? It's easy to carry on. It's easy to kind of, right, forget about it, right? And you can say it's not on purpose, but I think in that procrastination, it's only allowing you a time for these patterns and these thoughts to dissipate so that you don't have to take action. That's for my most part. But we're straying off the conversation today. So the fifth estate topic documentary that I was drawn to watch last night. What was going on with Buffy St. Germain? I do not personally like, and for those of you who've hung out with me for any length of time, unless I'm radiating light, right? If I'm not praising and I'm not smiling and I'm not bringing that positive emotion into that conversation that I'm going to have about somebody else, right? I usually don't. My dad brought us up on quotes, and one of those quotes that, this was one of my mother's favorites too, right? This was probably more my mother's favorite than my father's favorite. But my dad and my mom used to say all the time, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. So in posting my video yesterday, we talked a little bit about how that guilt and shame as caregivers, right? When we're not taking care, if we're not lifting things and taking the burden off of others, that sometimes we can feel a little bit guilty and shame because it's in our programming. It's now part of us to be that person. And when we're not that person, we tend to, as empaths and highly sensitives, we tend to feel guilty and we tend to feel shame and we tend to take that to the extreme, to the point where it could easily be taken advantage of in that way. So, we become hyper vigilant and we kind of pay attention to everything. It's what's got me here right now. And it's a contributor to me sitting here and having these types of conversations. I'm just giving myself a moment here to draw myself back to that main branch because I trail off. I trail off quite often because what that is me working the thought that I'm having in the moment, and that branch is the expansion, right? That's going down a branch for a few seconds, check it out, feel it out, expand on it, go a little bit further if I want to, or what you hear me see quite often is, okay, Cindy, bring it back. Because sometimes it's just in the beginning of that branch where the lesson lays. So drawing back, and that was all that I needed, was to be reminded that, I was brought up on this quote that, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. So, and it was more of a rule, right? This quote, we were expected to live by it, whether us kids were fighting with each other or we were tattletaling on somebody. It was always something that was used as a tool in my family, but it worked, right? Because in my programming as an adult, and as you see me here right now, and as I just explained, that that guilt and that shame surfaces in me when I have to address something that's involving somebody and it's not a positive manner. And I thought about it because, it's not part of my plan. It's not part of my brand. And yet, because of this documentary that I watched last night, right after we picked the word genuineness for this week, right? So there was a big serendipity there. But that story crossed my path a few times in the past week, and I didn't I didn't pick it up. I heard a sentence or I saw a headline on a thumbnail, but I just passed it off because, like I said, these things just probably don't interest me, but they don't interest me for a reason, right? Because those topics are not ringing true for Cindy. But because of the topic, it was in its patterning coming across my path. And just like if I don't write that note down, that sometimes in that procrastination, right? That when we know that something is being suggested to us, that maybe we should watch that's a clue, that's a breadcrumb, that's a serendipity. Those are those things that give us that little bit of insight and a little bit of direction, right, in what we do. But I didn't understand this because, again, I'm not that person. And I don't have anything, even after watching the documentary, I have more positive to say about Buffy because she was a musician. Right? I like music, but music is not a passion of mine, right? And neither am I part of that community, that indigenous community. And I'm not in that conspiracy theory and digging up the dirt and making somebody who's done so much good. And this is the thing. She has expanded consciousness so much in those 60 decades in the industry, right? And we are sacrificing her. We are sacrificing her. And in sacrificing her, you are tainting all that amazing, glorified, well-deserved art, work, respect. And if nothing else, just that attention that she was able to bring to some of the topics, right, that she had. And we're so eager because we don't feel good about ourselves that we need to tear somebody down. Okay. The topic is genuineness. I'm going to tackle this and try and use this situation as a prime example because in the industry, the networks that I run in, there's a lot of, right, ungenuineness there. But it's not intent. It's a matter of that lostness that we have in ourselves. And this, I hope, reflects a little bit better and maybe gives people a little bit of a moment to have a little bit of compassion for somebody who's probably suffering right now and seeing all her hard work, right, go down the drain, to have so much guilt and shame surface because as that surface, some of these other experiences and some of the covering up and some of the tactics used to cover things up, like that's all comes to the surface, right? Everything always comes to the surface. That's why we have to be able to use forgiveness when that necessity needs, because there are good people out there. There are light in the darkness that are trying to do amazing work, that are trying to give the world amazing gifts. And they're being creative in how they're doing it. And yes, it might not be in true genuineness, but when we're not sure of who we are because of in our programming we've grown up to, right? If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. This is the way it is. Do as I say, not as I do. Honor thy mother, thy father. Turn the other cheek. That we get lost, that we don't even know who we are. And we go about our day-to-days and we look at somebody like Buffy St. Marie, who is probably, I couldn't imagine the state that she could be in right now. And I hope that she has somebody, close people that she can talk to and confide in, right? That she has equally as many people rooting her on, right? Moving her forward, giving that courage to move herself forward, right? Amongst the accusations, amongst the downfall of her castle, right? She was the queen of her castle, and it's being rock by rock pulled out from underneath her. And, she's not the only person that this is happening to in this crazy town world that we're living in, right? Because in this crazy town, everybody feels insecure. Everybody feels insignificant. Everybody sees not seen, not heard, not worthy, right? Depressed, anxiety. And then when we see somebody have a little bit of success, right? We want to pull them down to our levels. And there is not 1 centimeter, 1 inch, if you're in imperial measurement, of allowance for mistakes. It makes me proud to call myself an entrepreneur, because that's one thing the entrepreneurs, right? When you practice mindset, when you have some of those stoic qualities, that you're able and you're actually encouraged to make mistakes, because it's only in our mistakes that the lessons are learned. And she is a lesson in this moment. She's a lesson for herself, and she's a lesson for everybody else who's not playing it genuine. But we also have to say, like I said, a lot of people wouldn't have a moment, wouldn't have a personality, would not have anything to ground on or ground in, if not for the characters that we create in our lives. Who are you going to blame for that, right? The media, those who want to tear us down, bring us down to their level so life doesn't seem so bad for them, right? Like, we're not even looking at the domino effect of what this is going to do. This is one person that might be destroyed by this. But there were lots of people who were admiring her and crediting her and worshiping her, right? And following, most of all, following in her footsteps. And how do you think those people feel? Right? Because we're whipping everything out. All that was built is being torn down because of an untruth, a perceived untruth, or a character that we create out of a need to feel like we belong, to feel like we matter, to feel like we're being seen, to feel like we're being heard, to feel like we are something when we don't recognize the something that we are, that we'll cling on to anything that's being offered to us if it's a solution in our missing, right? So I think, in a way, in talking about this word genuineness today, right? I think this is a good perspective, and not to delve into all those stories and all those aspects, but maybe to give you enough of an insight that possibly, like me, you'll be curious and look for yourself. Judge for yourself if you want to judge, right? Right? I judge. I judge. I have to judge. My hypervigilance in my well-being is patterned and programmed to judge, right? But I'm genuine in that. I'm not hiding that, right? And yes, that's part of my makeup. And yes, that might seem like a controlling narcissistic trait, but it's who I am. And I don't pretend to have any control over anybody else. And I don't tell anybody else, right, how to judge for themselves. I bring my perspectives. I show up fresh like a loaf of bread every single day, right? Right? And I didn't know what word we were going to have this week, right? And then I watched that documentary last night. It's a documentary, Fifth Estate. I watched Fifth Estate, and I saw in absolute horror just, and I could just put myself in her feet and in her shoes, and I was just thinking, oh my goodness, to have the whole world look at me. Kind of got a taste of that feeling a couple of months back, when somebody looked at me in a way that I didn't look at myself. And my first instinct was to defend myself, right? But then I stopped myself and I said to myself, I have no control over what somebody thinks about me. I have no control over that. I only have control over how I think, what I present to the world, and I try to be genuine in that, right? But I tackle some big topics that I know for a fact that not a lot of people are going to get, right? And I'm a YouTuber, right? I love YouTube. I want to move with YouTube. And I have great followers who follow my content. But I understand too, it's the followers that will help to push that message out, that much needed message of genuineness, or any one of the previous 13 words that we've chosen in the past 14 weeks. And each one of them came at the most opportune or inopportune time, depending on the conversation, right? You might think that this is inopportune, but it depends on what side of the fence that you're on, how deep you are into that conversation, right? It could be a cultural thing, right? It could be somebody who has strived in the industry their entire life and has been bypassed, and right, and somebody who wasn't deserving was recognized and took the spot that might have belonged to somebody else. I get it. I do get it. But we see it going on all over the world. We see castles falling all over the world. Kings are losing their castles. Queens are losing their kingdoms everywhere, right? And they're doing it in this age of digital where we're this close from each other, right? I'm going live. You're getting this the same time as it's coming out. There is no, oh, cut that. Oh, let's erase it, right? Oh. Like some of those videos that I watch that have got like 50 splices in an 8-minute video. And I'm going, I can't watch this because number one, right? It really says that somebody's unprepared. It really does. And it says that the message is just not going to get to me. It's not going to impact me the way that it should. Right? I come in, I spew my thing, right? Good or bad, fail. And I am far from being a stoic. I would love to think of myself as one. And I would hate to think of myself as narcissistic. But I do recognize that I am controlling. But I'm controlling of this, right? Right? And each one of us has that right, that responsibility, and that accountability to be controlling over this. Only, right? If this is yours, right? Because if it's not yours, then that's narcissistic, right? I am moving. I am moving with great mentorship. I really, really am. But I am choosing and I'm moving with it because it's important for me to show up as Cindy, right? And not as somebody else's message to the world. And even though I am involved, deeply involved in some ways to some of these messages because they have impacted my life so much, right? The few people that come into my YouTube channel, right? Will that be enough to make that impact and that recognition for others more impactful? I still do. I do those shout outs to those amazing people that I've learned from. But I've learned from so many people, and I've learned from people who are not teachers, but they are experiencers in their own life. People who consistently fail and just maybe get it right, maybe even just once in their lifetime. But I am grateful if that I happen to have that opportunity to be able to cross somebody's path or somebody's crossing my path in that moment, that I can expand and share in that experience with somebody. But it is in the lessons, and everybody's getting lessons right now. And so I think for the biggest lesson for me in this word that we picked, genuineness, because already I see the lesson for me because I do not always feel comfortable in some of these deep conversations. Right. I'm light. I'm light. I want it light. I want it fun. I want it adventurous. I want it curious. I want it to be right. But I also understand that we are in a serious time, and in my give back, and I think in my ability to give back, right? I have to be genuine in that. And being genuine means to be able to admit that I don't have all the answers, right? But if I focus what I'm good at and not pay so much mind into, right, what other people are doing. I have no idea how the fifth estate came across my path. It was curious. That's why I'm talking about it in this moment, because of the word we picked, how everything was patterning, and it was trying to get through me. For over a week it has, and I just wasn't picking it up until last night. Maybe it was the title of the video. I have no idea. But I dug into the meat in that, and I recognized, oh my goodness, okay. Well, this is the perspective that will take tomorrow. So maybe I'm just gonna say it right now because it's telling me to, is just this idea, right? Not to cast stones, not to cast stones, right? People make mistakes all the time. And like I said, so many of us represent, just when you wake up in the morning and you go to your makeup bag and you put your makeup on your face, right? You're playing into that game, right? And maybe not to the extent where, right? You could say, well, okay, maybe that's not genuine, but, right? But, well, yeah, there is different levels to that. But you can also catch the message of, well, maybe you don't need that makeup. Maybe you're good enough just the way you are, right? I grew up in a dynamic family, and I had a family that was probably 50-50 in the liarship. I judge, right? So I pick up quickly, almost immediately when I'm fed that poop. I right. People don't look me in the. I know it. I know it's coming. I get it, right? But where was I gonna go? Where was I gonna go with this? I would like to be the judge for myself, right? And coming from that family of liars, right? Liars. I saw the holes that lying dug, right? Because you dig a hole, you cover it up, and you go off and you forget what you say, and then you say something to somebody, and then you got to cover that up. And the next thing you're so nervous because you've told so many stories. And then finally, when it smacks you upside the head, right? The truth, it's coming from a source that you never even thought to cover, right? So I show up here fresh like a loaf of bread every single day. And, this was a good lesson for me because I do understand that sometimes when we talk about these heavy subjects, and they are heavy subjects, but they are based in reality, right? I want all that overcoming, all that achievement, all that goal setting. I want it to be realistic. I want it to be a human endeavor, right? But a human endeavor taking mentorship through her own intuition and being able to share that with an audience that might be able to see the evidence in that. See, one of my goals this year was to be able to have a little bit of that evidence to share, right? Clearly, right? That wasn't enough before the fact, right? Before the fact. And it doesn't mean some grand premonition, right? Like, well, we know those, right? Right? What do you call it? Nostradamus? No, we're not talking about that. But something that might inspire, might motivate, or might give somebody some food for thought in their own actions of how they cover their bases, right? Can we have conversations? Can we fess up? Do we have people we've lied to that if we did talk to them and tell them the truth, that we could finally take that weight off our shoulders, right? That worry that somebody's going to find out and smear our faces in it and bring us down to their level, or all that amazing, right? The higher you go, the harder you fall, right? I say shame on us being piranhas, right? Shame on us. Like, live and let live. Don't we have enough to worry about our own lives, right? Than tearing apart other people's lives without understanding why it happened or how it happened, right? But just making somebody pay because it did happen. Lots of times we move because we don't want to admit we've made a mistake. We don't want to admit we said something that might be an untruth. And sometimes we'll run with that untruth instead of fessing it up and saying, oh, I made a little boo boo there, right? I've made lots of those mistakes. Lots of those mistakes. And I'm going to say, grateful that I'm in a network, that I'm with the entrepreneurs, that I am with the people who practice mindset and law of attraction. I'm with the Stoics. But, right, I'm with the card readers too, right? I'm with the channelers because, right, I channel this. Like a lot of this, I have to come in myself after my life and take the lesson for myself. And I will. I think today's might be an important one for me, right? In the matter of this topic, courage. And wouldn't it be crazy if that next word was courage? I'm pretty certain there's a word like that at the very least. If not that word, if not that word, there'll be a word something like that. Let me see. I don't like to look at this because I don't want to know where the words are, but I'm just going to see if that word is there because that next word, I'm not even going to look because I don't want to know where it is because remember what I said, I know where that word forgiveness was. And when first few weeks when I started this live show over here on YouTube, right, I really wanted that word. I really wanted to bite into that word. But now that I see the sequencing of how the words are being served to us, right, let's just let it continue to be served to us. So why don't we pull up a little bit of kindness, right, in this process and let the process, right? Process, right? Let's not be those piranhas, right? Let's try not to take sides without hearing the whole truth. But remember, even hearing the whole truth, you might not hear somebody else's truth in their admittance that because they don't know sometimes truly who they are, that we create for ourselves somebody that we would like to be, or somebody that we admire, or someone or something we could represent. And if that's not a truth, and if you don't get that truth, I don't know, because it's pretty in your face. It was pretty in my face. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. We'll see each other tomorrow. I'm officially done. I pull my clothes out of the dryer, fold them up, it's all for me. Gonna make a nice dinner. I'm gonna take in some lessons. I'm gonna empty all the footage from my laptop so we can get started on the next adventure, which I hope will be tomorrow to get to work on I think it'll be the last one. I'm looking at the footage. I think it's going to be the last. I'm going to put it all together, but it'll be a long video. I'm sure it'll still be like 40 minutes or an hour long. We'll see. But you guys have a great day. We'll tackle this word, genuineness, genuine, tomorrow in a different perspective, right? Hopefully that was light enough and kind enough that maybe, right, we can take some of that pinch out of it, not just for, right, Buffy, but her family, her extended families, right? Her families on the reserves who took her in as her own, those mentees who she brought up in the music industry, in the government, who rewarded her and recognized her for her contribution, right? For all those adults who in their childhood remember her on Sesame Street. I remember her on Sesame Street. I grew up on Sesame Street, right? And to have all that goodness, to have not just her lessons, but the lessons and the representation and those people who recognize and, right, it could be ugly. It could. But does it have to be? Is it going to do uh, more good to have it swept under the rug or pulled out? To each one of us, we get to decide that. And I hope those voices are quiet in that process, right? That's the last time I'm going to speak about it, right? It's the last time I'm going to speak about it. I'm going to reflect on it 100%. I'm going to reflect on it. And maybe, wouldn't it be crazy if somewheres down the road, tens, decades down the road, that I'm actually able to put a grateful out there for the lesson that I received in this moment because of somebody else's painful experience or communities. Because let's not forget, right? There are other people hurt by this situation, and that's the sad part of it, right? It's not a matter of taking sides, it's a matter of doing what the right thing is. And sometimes, these are the perfect times for apologies. These are the perfect time to recognize what we've done and what we have done in that contribution to the goodness of the world, right? It is a balance. It's always a little bit of good with a little bit of bad. It always is, right? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. You guys have a great day. See each other tomorrow. Bye bye.